Tips from Trestle is brought to you by eMenu Choice Point of Sale, Wiseox AI, and Benny Keith Foods. Welcome to Tips from Trestle, the Senior Living Food and Hospitality Podcast. This podcast explores the senior living industry with a unique focus on food, hospitality, and the community experience. I'm your host, Aaron Fish. My goal for this podcast: educate, inform, and inspire leaders in senior living. How? By bringing the resident and customer experience to the front of mind in our industry. We should bring the passionate spirit of food and hospitality to everything that we do and everyone we serve each and every day. So what are we waiting for? Let's get to it. On this re-release episode of Tips from Trestle, we're throwing it way back to season 1 and a fascinating conversation I had with a good friend of mine, Margaret Roche. Margaret is the founder of Roche Dietitians and a nationally recognized leader in nutrition consulting. Maggie and her team at Roche Dietitians create strategies that help healthcare organizations and businesses that support healthcare distinguish themselves through food and nutrition. Maggie is a registered dietitian with a master's degree in clinical nutrition, and she has advanced credentials as a certified diabetes educator, is board certified as a specialist in gerontological nutrition, and is distinguished as a fellow of the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. So I hope you enjoy this throwback to our conversation all about creating your own nutrition philosophy. Enjoy. Welcome back to Tips from Trestle. This is part 2, if you will, with Margaret Roche. Previously, we were talking about nutrition philosophy and the foundational pieces of it in senior living. And so in this conversation, we really wanted to get into the nuts and bolts of what is the actual nutritional role? What does dining do? What do the different positions look like? Maggie, thanks for being back. I want to start by asking you the question that I think we started to get on the last conversation. What is dining's role in a wellness program?
Well, I think dining's role is to take the nutrition leadership. And I think almost all dining programs have access to a dietitian. So it would be in coordination with the dietitian and culinary, of course, but to really get that foundational understanding of what is our nutrition philosophy, what evidence-based eating plan are we using, what are the things, the nutritional bits of it that we really want to emphasize for our residents, all tied into understanding who the resident is or who the client is that you are serving in terms of understanding their unique nutritional needs. If, as you discussed prior, is it a 55-year-old or is it an 85-year-old or all above? And how are we going to do that? And then how is this going to be presented to the resident? Mainly, what's this going to look like on the menu? Are we going to have offerings every day? Are we going to have weekly offerings? I'll go back to the Mind Diet example. The Mind Diet is very specific.
Yeah.
And what I love about the Mind Diet is that they define the Mediterranean diet. We all understand the Mediterranean diet as being a very healthful diet, health promoting, disease preventing. Research backs it up. The problem is, how do you define a Mediterranean diet? People think a Mediterranean diet might be pizza and red wine. You know what they mean?
Absolutely, yeah.
The nice thing about the Mind Diet is that they define the Mediterranean diet for us, and then they added into it, which is what the Mind Diet did.
Yeah. The Mind Diet is such a great example because one of the reasons as an operator, I was drawn to it is I don't have that nutritional background. I'm not even a classically trained chef, right? I'm the front of the house administrator, operator. But when I looked at the Mind Diet and I looked at that concept of building a philosophy, I looked at the components of how is a chef going to execute this? How is a dining room manager going to explain this? How does a marketing director explain it? And it was well laid out, but it felt like there was a lot of latitude inside of the perimeter. The perimeters are very specific, but there's a lot of latitude to be creative and say, if you do about this much of this and this much of this, then you have, instead of 3 recipes, you've got 30 recipes that you can use. But it doesn't necessarily limit those different people in their specific roles inside of the department. And so I feel like when you're talking about developing your philosophy, that piece becomes really important.
And that's what everybody uses to execute. And so the Mind Diet's a really good example too, because I've worked with organizations who are like, well, we want the Mind Diet inspired. We want Mediterranean inspired. I'm like, that's fine, but define it and be very clear. So that meaning 85% of the time, we're going to get it. We're going to execute this, because I would rather see the account to say, we offer the Mind Diet, but there's no olive oil, or it's a 50-50 olive oil background. There's only berries in season, which are things that are daily components technically of the Mind Diet. But if we say, these are the types of food we offer that are consistent with the Mind Diet, or consistent with the Mediterranean diet, or consistent with maybe even DASH. But, I know enough to know if I go down south and I don't have biscuits on the menu, which are sodium bombs, not the best sources, saturated fat, that is not, it's not the way people want to live their golden years.
Right.
So we have to figure out, how do we fit that and meld that in to our menu program? And in my opinion, that needs to be determined in the nutrition philosophy ahead of time. We can't have the culinarians in 50 different communities saying, well, my interpretation of our nutrition program is this, and my interpretation is that. Or even just having a dietitian sitting in an office figuring it out. One person, you really take a collaborative approach.
Yeah, no, and that's a great segue into kind of the next couple of questions I want to discuss. So let's talk about the role of the dietitian and the role of the chef when you're looking at your nutritional philosophy or your wellness program. Obviously, there are two very different skill sets and training, but they have to go hand in hand. So if we can, let's take a little bit of time and kind of sort out what that looks like with those two positions.
Well, I'm a big advocate for the chef or culinary and dining leader / dietitian partnership. There's kind of historically been a little bit of tension there.
Yeah.
But you can put these two skill sets, as you say, together. It really is like old school synergy. 1 + 1 = 3, right? Because there's much that we all understand about the job to be done, but the perspective that we bring and the skill set that we bring really can be powerful when you bring it together. People have to have respect for each other's position. You have to walk into it understanding this guy's going to teach me something, or this person's going to teach me something. I've got something to learn here. But once you get past that, it's very powerful. Very powerful. So I think that the role has to be collaborative. But on the other hand, don't discount the skill coming from the dietitian perspective. Dietitians set you up with an evidence-based program so that you have to stand on when people, for transparency purposes, when people say to you, talking about wellness, what do you mean Mediterranean? How are you defining it? I look at the ingredients on what you serve because I looked it up online. What's this? What are you guys talking about? You want to have a strong foundation of how you're defining your wellness nutritionally.
Yeah. As someone who's come from maybe a different angle, because I worked with chefs, I worked with dietitians, I've had chefs and dietitians work for me, knowing that one of my jobs was to bring these two together. I clearly can see the synergy that comes from that. What have you seen as some good approaches, good tactics, good ways to approach getting those two positions to actually come together and understanding that it shouldn't be a us versus them, but it's a we need in the operation?
Technology continues to drive changes in senior care, and that includes food service. eMenu Choice is an award-winning point-of-service application for managing the dining function in senior living communities. This mobile, touchscreen-enabled software enhances the dining experience for residents while streamlining processes for staff. The flexibility and functionality of eMenu Choice makes it an effective solution for any type of senior living environment, from independent and assisted living to skilled nursing facilities. It works for production kitchens or restaurant-style service with options for per meal or a la carte pricing, and accommodates a variety of payments, including bill to account, meal credits, and credit cards. Created by a senior care provider with more than a century of experience serving older adults, E-Menu Choice eliminates communication barriers between staff and residents while enabling person-centered choices and greater resident satisfaction. E-Menu Choice, transforming dining for senior living.
You probably can answer this better than I, because I've worked with you in different settings, Aaron, and you always preface conversations when we're starting out on something like this. You've always said, I know enough to know, but there's so much I don't know. And I like to take that approach myself, in that when I'm with a dining operations person or a chef, culinarian, there's so much I don't know about making it happen, which is what the operations guys do, making it beautiful and really working with the food and understanding how we're pull this off, that people are excited about it. You know, the creativity that people who have their hands in food all day have that nobody else has. I think if we all take the perspective of, I need what that other person's bringing, I just think it's very powerful. And I don't know if it's as big of a challenge in terms of when you have a conflict, as much as, because I've done this in other settings where we're doing group conversations and panel discussions. I find there's plenty of folks who are getting along fantastically and working and having success. And they'll put it this way, those people who are successful in this area, it's because of that. It's because they harness that power of that interdisciplinary perspective.
Yeah, and I think you're right. You know, I feel like a lot of my previous successes have been from that. I have a good understanding of what you do, but I know there's more to it, and I need to build that bridge. And when I think about like chefs and dietitians working together, I think about you've got that nutrition philosophy, and then the next step is putting those two individuals, almost like put them in the conference room and say, okay, here's the foundation. Now I need you to start putting the 2x4s up and figuring out what that looks like. How do we do like a pureed program? There's ITSE standards that have to be met that you need to follow, right? To make sure you're doing it the right way. The chef doesn't likely know that unless they've been in and been very dedicated in learning about it. So the dietitian has to bring that knowledge, but the chef's responsibility is, well, I can't just put 3 plops of food on a plate and serve it, because that's just not going to work. You know, it's that understanding of, I can bring you this, I'm going to bring this to the table, and how do we make all of this work? And I think it's so important, and we'll build a successful program if everybody has that approach. So I think you're right on the money with that.
And you can't do it without it. You really can't.
You know, in some of the corporate settings I've been in, I've sometimes struggled a little bit by not having one or the other, because there's been a priority placed on, you know, and that's the nature of being in a corporate leadership role. You only get X amount of dollars and resources. So it's, do I get a chef? Do I get a dietitian? Like, how do I manage those two pieces? And you have to find a way to do both. I don't think, like you said, you can't do it with one or the other. You have to have the two working in tandem.
And they can work in tandem, and they can work sequentially too. So it doesn't have to turn into this big, huge 8 million meeting project. The dietitian does her part. Chef does her part, come together and say, now let's make it happen. People need to be prepared and really bring to the table their best, and then, you know, knit it up so that it makes sense. And start with, who are we as an organization? What are our missions, our value, whom we serve? You know, have a good, deep understanding of that.
Absolutely. So I want to steer in a slightly different direction. I'm curious as to your thoughts. You know, we talked about a whole person approach. We've talked about being collaborative with the people working in the department, the dietitians, the chefs. How do we get, how do you do things like choice? Like, how do you get choice into your nutrition program?
That's one of the biggest questions or statements I get about why they can't do it. Our people don't want. If I put a fried chicken on the menu up against the salmon, whatever, the fried chicken's going to sell out. People love fried chicken, and we don't want to be in a position where we're saying to someone literally for the rest of their life, you're not getting fried chicken.
Right.
We have to have an understanding and a respect for our residents in that we know everyone wants to feel better. It's fact. Eating well makes you feel better, period. People have to manage their expectations in terms of what nutrition can do. If you have a chronic disease, it's not going to cure you. necessarily in many cases, particularly for the older adult who's had a chronic condition for 40 some years. It can make you feel better though. And I wanted to just say that because we have to have a good understanding of the role of nutrition. And I think sometimes people discount the older adult and that they don't fit or they can't learn anything new. And
Right.
I'd be surprised because I have to say I've had that bias, but I'm surprised at the level of understanding that many older adults have about nutrition because it's out there in the world. It's been out there since the 70s, in terms of wellness and their willingness to try new things. So it's meeting them where they're at and taking an educational approach. There has to be, by the way, back to nutrition philosophy, your nutrition philosophy has to include an educational component. How are we going to connect with our residents about this? How are we going to help them understand and get their input on what we're trying to do so that when we build this, it's meaningful to them?
Yeah. And I think one of the things you mentioned early was you talked about the comparison of the fried chicken and the salmon. And as an operator, I 1000% agree that fried chicken is probably going out the door. But if you're thinking about, this is my perspective at least, if you're thinking about that whole person wellness, sometimes you need to have that soul satisfying meal to meet that wellness need, right? So I eat salmon on a regular basis, but I also every once in a while have a fried chicken binge too. And it's really that, you know what? I've eaten the salmon, I've eaten healthy this week. I just need that just to feel good. Is that back to my roots or back to whatever that need is? I think choice fits in that way. But I think there's a way operationally, if you're smart about how you prepare food, how you manage your kitchens, that you can actually increase choice as opposed to reduce it as you're preparing menus and creating them.
That is so well said. So that's a really good example of that would be part of our nutrition philosophy is soul satisfied because of our encompassing wellness program includes this is how it's not just straight up nutrition. It's that soul satisfying food. I love that. That's great.
I'm going to coin that up.
You should, because that's an important part of it. And we would weave that in.
Yeah.
But people can tell your BS meter. People at BS meters, they're going to know when we do a Mediterranean diet here. And the only fish on the menu that week was beer battered, whatever, and fries.
Yeah.
It's that obvious. We have to have, and so another example, I guess, is the plant-based stuff and the vegetarian. Back in the day, we would have a can of beans back there for the 2 vegetarians you get in 5 years. But now it's different.
Absolutely.
Thing is here to stay. And it can't be just, I put the Beyond Burger on the menu as an always available so that the vegetarians can eat Beyond Burgers every day, as far as I'm concerned. It's just not the solution.
No, I agree. And it's funny you say that because I remember many years ago being asked, I need a vegetarian diet. How are you going to meet that? And we literally, because we didn't have a good nutrition philosophy, because we hadn't really thought it through, we turned an entree option into a vegetable plate. And it was literally just, we offered 4 vegetables of the day, pick 3 of them, and that can be your meal. And it had no thinking behind it, no thought about, the protein needs of a vegetarian, all the different aspects like that. It was just, you need vegetables, here's vegetables. And I think it speaks to, you gotta evolve and think about all of these things.
And I guarantee you that organization had access to a dietitian. And so a lot of this saves you trouble. Sitting your nutrition philosophy up front saves you trouble because that dietitian would have said, hey, we need protein. This is the greatest risk for these people. And there's something else back there. Well, we could do eggs, we could do cheese if it, lacto-ovo vegetarian. Let's get some other sources of protein that we could have 5 or 6 or 7 entrees ready to go, a block of tofu, whatever.
Right.
There's ways to do it, to figure it out ahead of time so you're not letting. And that's the other thing with this, the whole turnover and all of that. We can't leave it to the operator at the moment of on his feet or her feet to have to decide right then and there what the solution is. It's not fair to them. We have to give them tools they need to execute.
For over a century, Benny Keith has been a trusted leader in the food service industry. As a broadline distributor, we offer an extensive selection of products, delivering to 21 states through 10 distribution centers. We can help you create a thriving culinary culture by pairing quality products with customized solutions that elevate your residents' dining experience. Our team of registered dietitians provide unmatched customer service by modifying menus, selecting recipes, ensuring regulatory compliance, and more. Quality, value, and service are at the heart of everything we do. Benny Keith Foods puts the care back in healthcare.
Yeah, and I think about some of the smaller operators who want to invest or need the investment and the resources. And I think sometimes they just don't know where to get it. And there's a lot of ways to get that support and get that done without having to bring on a full-time dietitian or to have to hire this huge staff. So I think it's important to know that, like you said, it doesn't have to be 800 hours of work to get it done, get it in place. If you're thoughtful and you're smart about it, you can get to it. We're almost out of time here on the second one, and we could probably do a third or a fourth one of these. But I wanted to ask you, what's not wellness, right? We've been talking about what is wellness, what is the nutrition philosophy, how does everybody do it? What's not wellness? Like, what do you see that as?
I think it's important that we don't cross the line to medical nutrition therapy. But by medical nutrition therapy, I mean diabetes, like a diet for people with diabetes or low cholesterol, etc. However, all of what we talked about in terms of nutrition philosophy, if you get into an evidence-based wellness preventative health program, it helps those with diabetes and hypertension and kidney disease and etc. But it's important that you draw the line for folks and that you don't get yourself in a position where your 18-year-old server is giving medical nutrition therapy advice or a resident who has diabetes.
Yeah.
Hit the seat. And back to that choice thing that we're letting the residents know this is what's healthy, but eat whatever you want.
Yeah, that's a great point. That made me think of, the line that I see that kind of has to be drawn almost between a skilled nursing setting and everything that comes before that. Because I've been in assisted living communities where sometimes there's an expectation that we're going to manage the diet. We're going to give you all of that medical intervention through nutrition. And I would always want to push back and say, no, this is, you're in assisted living, you're in independent living, you're still in control. You're still the one making the choices and the decisions, and so I need to give you the ability to do the diet, to manage it. But at the end of the day, you need to be the one managing it because you're the person experiencing it. So if you want to eat healthy, I need to have those options. But if you want fried chicken and mashed potatoes and gravy every day, I need to be able to meet that need too and letting you choose that path.
Right. But that just underscores the need for education. And I do think there's a greater role for the dietitian in assisted living. Now, of course, in skilled nursing, the dietitian is there. And I do think the role for wellness in the regular menu for long-term care. For example, things like, why don't we just put oatmeal on the menu? The difference between the nutritional value of oatmeal and cream of wheat is phenomenal. So do we have cream of wheat every other day? Those kinds of decisions can be made from a wellness perspective. It'll feed into your skilled nursing program once you develop your overarching wellness program. Perhaps you're like a CCRC. Back to the medical nutrition therapy component, I do think there's a role for dietitians to come in and provide that education to individuals so they can self-select in the dining room. And there's a real need for that. And I think it's underused in the industry.
I would agree.
There's opportunities for reimbursement on that too, for those with diabetes in particular, through insurance. And I'm sure there's plenty of people with self-pay too. So I think there's a role for tapping into that.
Awesome. So any last thoughts, anything that you feel we need to emphasize or put a point or two on before we wrap up this discussion?
Well, I think you're better off downplaying the wellness nutrition thing if you're not going to do it right. Because I think you can cause more trouble by doing it wrong. and by doing it wrong and not having a cohesive program that's been worked through your entire team, nutrition, dining, your dining leaders, your chefs, your dietitians, and have it evidence-based, you can get yourself into a lot of trouble by just making this stuff up by what we all know is healthy. I think it could backfire on you. And it's not that complicated. Once you get people with the know-how together, you can really put together some beautiful programs that are unique to you. See it as wellness is an opportunity to differentiate and to really deliver on what you identify as your values, your goals, for your organization. It's a wonderful opportunity to really express yourself about who you are and how you see taking care of older adults and serving them, since nutrition is such a big part of it. And wellness is what it's all about.
No, that's all great stuff. Maggie, you want to tell our listeners, how can they reach out to you? How can they find all the great information that you share all the time?
People can reach me through our website, rochedietitians.com. Another way I communicate with a lot of folks is in LinkedIn. And I'm under Margaret Roche, R-O-C-H-E, on LinkedIn, or Roche Dietitians. That's where our website is. Or you can look us up and call our office. There, we answer the phone. Live people answer our phone every day. So give us a call.
Great. Well, Maggie, it's always fun to chat with you. I'm sure we'll do it again in the future. I appreciate your time and joining me here on Tips from Trestle.
Thanks, Sarah. Fun being with you.
So there it is, everybody. Another one in the books. Thanks again for tuning in. Please follow and subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts. And be sure to follow us on social media at Tips from Trestle. You can also learn more about the work I do by following me on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, and even TikTok. And be sure to check out Trestle Hospitality Concepts at www.trestlehospitalityconcepts.com. I'm your host, Aaron Fish, and this has been another episode of Tips from Trestle.